Today, we shop for brands, presumably that we've been marketed to, that we like, that we see celebrities wearing or athletes wearing or buying or eating or driving or whatever it is, right? That's how advertising works. We get made aware of a product or a company or a service. We get told to believe why it would be a great thing for us to buy. And if we need it or believe it, we buy it. If we love it, we keep buying it and we fall in love with that brand and so on and so forth.
Welcome to Contrary to Popular Opinion, a podcast hosted by Vujade Digital. In each episode, we bring you provocative topics and novel perspectives around leadership, business, and marketing that defy the norms because exponential growth demands unconventional thinking and visionary action. So open your mind and let's get into this week's episode.
Hey everyone, Kelly McGuire with Vujade Digital. Excited to get into today's topic.
Hey, everybody, it's Todd, Kelly's partner. And I would normally say happy Monday, but it's not a happy Monday for Kelly because Arsenal did not beat Manchester City yesterday. They lost 2-1. Sorry, Kelly, but maybe you're going to have to wait on booking that trip to England. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't want to talk about it.
I know. Heartbreaker. But sports are good to talk about. On another note, what I queued up for us to talk about today, I just philosophically, I don't know how to think about this. As a human, I don't know how to think about this. And at my age, at 55, I'm going to think about it very differently than you, perhaps, who's a decade younger than me versus people who are in our company that are a decade younger than you, or even now, I guess maybe my kids who are Gen Zers are going to think about it because it's so wild to think about. I don't even know existentially how to process it. But what we're going to talk about today is an article that our friend Annie Gibbon from Maitri AI sent us, which is an article in Harvard Business Review titled Research: What China's AI Agents Reveal About the Future of Commerce. And I didn't think about it in a marketing sense when I read that headline. And then as you get into it, what it reveals is marketing a completely dying thing? And is it going to be gone in 5 years from now? And every marketing agency and ad agency that does marketing or marketing department really isn't going to exist in its current form? Because what the article is talking about in summary is that in China, because of the technology infrastructure in China between all of the big Chinese sort of internet companies and backbone providers and app providers, the idea of the agentic commerce agent is alive and being tested today. And it's working apparently in some ways. And that means that if I want to take a trip somewhere in China, or I want to get my lunch ordered for me, or I need to go buy shoes or whatever it is, I can create an agent, give it my credit card, give it my frequent flyer miles account or my loyalty account or whatever it is I need to give it direction, and it will go do whatever I want it to do from a commerce standpoint. It'll buy my lunch. It'll deliver it when I want it delivered. It'll book a trip. It can do anything within reason, I guess, within this article. And so the idea of that, what I want to talk about today is, well, if that's the case, that AI agent is not going to make decisions based on brand affinity, brand loyalty, brand emotion, brand connection. It's not going to make decisions on anything but algorithm. And if that's the case, what in the world does marketing do in that new world, right? Because today we shop for brands, presumably that we've been marketed to, that we like, that we see celebrities wearing or athletes wearing or buying or eating or driving or whatever it is, right? That's how advertising works. We get made aware of a product or a company or a service. We get told to believe why it would be a great thing for us to buy. And if we need it or believe it, we buy it. If we love it, we keep buying it and we fall in love with that brand and so on and so forth. Agentic commerce and AI agents, pretty sure they don't care about any of that stuff. So if they're making the purchase, what's the job of marketing? Because the funnel, as you and I work on today in its traditional sense, kind of goes away or it gets outsourced. And ultimately, we're not really marketing for brands anymore. We're marketing for an algorithm, which oddly enough, that's kind of what we used to do. Google's algorithms, and we still kind of have to do that. But there's no emotional resonance with an AI agent, right? So what are we marketing to? What happens to performance marketing? What do you think about this?
Yeah. So before I kind of get into the differences in the market of the research, which I think is critical in this, I'll just kind of break down what I see is the core tenet of the article that is interesting. And I think an interesting thought exercise, which is where it really points out is that performance marketing right now is really the exercise of trying to create human behavior as a result of delivery of messaging and advertising. You're trying to get someone to click on something, to remember something, to act on something, to buy something, take some kind of action, but you're tailoring it to a human and you're measuring it and the success of that on whether or not you're successfully creating those actions and behaviors. And that creates the feedback loop, which feeds the entire industry. And so, what it sort of hypothesizes is that you're adding in a layer to that and a outcome that is less human driven, right? Before you can get to the human outcome layer, which we rely so heavily on, you have to go through the AI layer. You have to be surfaced. You have to show up in a way that the AI finds it credible and a fit for its mandate that is guided by the human preference that's been developing around it. And that's where brand comes in really big, right? The human has programmed an agent to get its lunch for them. There's still going to be a preference on where they like to eat from. What kinds of food do they like? What do they like? McDonald's? Do they like Burger King? Those types of things. So there's a preference element still tied to the human, but you're not trying to get the human to decide where to eat to McDonald's. You're trying to get your option to show up in the machine element to be that deciding factor. And so it changes that.
I don't think that's what this article's saying. I think this article's saying if I want a turkey sandwich for lunch, I'm going to tell my agent to go figure out the best turkey sandwich and buy it for me. I'm not going to say go buy me the turkey sandwich at Mendocino Farms. I'm going to say go find me the best turkey sandwich and buy it for me and deliver it at 1:30.
No, I don't think it's that because again, the agent is still tailored to the person's preference, right? And so if the agent learns you or your actions, your outcomes, likes Mendocino Farms, it's natural. It's not doing its job if it's not finding you the best turkey sandwich that you ideally want or fits your needs or has a feedback loop. So there is still an element of preference and taste and things that you want that plays a role in it. But again, the problem or the new component to it is before you would be trying to reach that human at the point of the decision of, okay, it's coming up to lunchtime. This person's going to want lunch. I need to prompt them and say, hey, remember us at Mendocino Farms? We really like you. Come buy our lunch. And you're not doing that anymore, right? In this scenario, you're trying to tailor to this agent who's doing the work on behalf of that human in advance. And so you're tailoring to that algorithm. I personally, this is where I get into the market differences. I think we are a different market than the Chinese market. I think the human behaviors we go through, we saw the backlash that happened with Meta and the pushback on the influence of the algorithms and choosing content for you and pushing those types of things. And that inherently triggered something in the public outcry. I'm not saying it won't happen at all. I absolutely believe that optimizing and factoring in the machine optimization and curation layer prior to getting to the human interaction is very much going to be a thing. I think there will be a difference in how our market or North America or US markets or other markets, European markets versus Asian markets or Chinese markets. They will be different, just like social commerce is different amongst them. There's overlap and there's learnings and there's interesting insights to be had and shared, but I do think they will behave different. I think that the US market just simply, if ever, I don't know if it ever will, but if it does, I think it'll be a very long time away still before fully autonomous, I'm not in the decision loop happens. I do think there's a curation and assistance layer that can be tailored to. But all of this goes back into, regardless, I do think that marketers need to start to think about before there was always the discovery layer, right? That's what SEO was. That's what optimization was. That's what AEO, all these types of things were, which is how do I show up and break through the noise of all the options that exist The difference is you could always supplement or offset that with the paid aspect of, okay, well, my organic ranking isn't great. My reviews aren't great. My word of mouth isn't great. I can just pay to get eyeballs. I can just make sure that I can throw money at the problem and make sure that I show up to people who are targeted, who fit my profile, who I want to see my message. And I don't know that it'll be that perfect with this new layer of, I can't just throw money on it because I have to be set up and optimized to break through the machine curation layer that matches me to the opportunity. So it might just change the steps and the component and the way in which performance marketing has to factor in its influence and its ability to break through, connect with. And then the major element that it's going to change is the attribution and measurement of outcomes, the breakthrough and the curation to those human outcomes.
Don't go there yet. Don't go into attribution yet, because I want to go there, but I still want to pick. I want to pick the other part of this out. So hold the attribution thing for a second for the interruption here. But I want to go back to what you said. You described it as the human's still going to sort of set or create the preferences that the agent's going to function by. And what I'm arguing is the way this article talked about it was that's not necessarily going to be the case, and that the agents are going to they're going to go out and optimize around algorithms that are tied to price, that are tied to utility, that are tied to reviews, that are tied to structured data, that are tied to any other sort of constraints. Maybe it's a delivery time or whatever, but basically they're not optimized. They're not going out based on preferences. Like they're not going out and going to Mendocino Farms because I told it I want to go buy my sandwich from Mendocino Farm. Mendocino Farm is going to get lots of traction for the listeners that we have or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm arguing that this article is suggesting these agents don't scroll Instagram, they don't click on ads, they don't do any of that stuff. So there's no marketing involved that's influencing them. It's all these other API level, sort of data level visibility signals that the agents are going to use to feed them to go make the choices based on maybe what parameters you give it. But the idea, what you're suggesting is, hey, I need some new shoes. And I know I want Nike running shoes. And so I'm going to tell my agent to go find me the best deal on the Nike whatever model running shoe. And instead of me doing Google searches and shopping, it's going to go do it for me. And that's all its utility is. What I'm saying is, what I took away from this article is I'm going to say, I need new running shoes. This is the kind of running I do. I'm a marathon runner. I need shoes that hold up well. I want a low heel drop. I need a lot of arch support. Go find me the best shoes. And if that were the prompt to that agent, there's no marketing loyalty attached to that at all. And now that agent is relying on all the stuff that I'm talking about. It's looking at all the different brands, all the different prices, all the different sort of utility components to the shoe. Are there constraints? Do they have I need a size 9. Do they have a size 9? I want it in black, not white. Do they have all those constraints, right? What I'm reading this article is saying is that is going to happen. And it is happening in China. And like you said, maybe the US consumer is different, but in China, it's happening that way. So if that's the case, just go with me for a second. I didn't tell it I want Nike. I didn't tell it anything. I just gave it all the parameters. Where does marketing and brand fit in at all in that ecosystem? Because
but that's the thing is, I just don't see a world where exactly what you described makes any sense, because there's just not a world where.
But this article is saying that's what consumers are doing in China.
I don't know that I read it the way that you are in that. I don't think that the idea of what the product is, the brand that it comes from, or any of that, I don't think that plays zero role. I don't think that if you're just describing a pair of shoes that you want in the functional utilitarian aspect of it, I don't think that if the AI decides that some completely unknown and unheard of brand is the best fit, that it's going to buy that for the user and the user is going to accept that. I don't think that you're all of a sudden going to stop having consumers that don't care if their shoes are Nike or Adidas or Hoka's or whatever they are. I don't think that goes away. I don't think that if historically I've enjoyed McDonald's and Burger King, and all of a sudden my AI agent just starts randomly ordering me restaurants I've never heard of before, I'm just going to be fine with that being my new norm of my acceptance. I do still think that the agent is going to factor in the preferences and what I like and what I do and what's available to me. It's going to narrow the curation. It's going to uncover things, but I don't think that your consumer is just going to be like, I'm used to like my preference. I like Nikes and I like Hoka's, but all of a sudden now that if the agent starts buying me unknown knockoff brand X because it fit this criteria and that's what shows up on my door, I'm going to be thrilled with that outcome.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about it so futuristically, but it did describe some situations like that. But even based on how I just laid that out, can you imagine a future yourself where maybe there's something you want to buy that is a little bit more nebulous? You're not quite sure yet about it. Maybe it is, I don't know, a pair of, I'm just going to stick with shoes, a pair of dress shoes, but you really have no idea where to go buy. Like you specifically know, I want black dress shoes. I don't want anything shiny. I want like maybe a more leather or a suede fabric or something. I know I need them in black. I don't really know where to go buy them. Can you see a world where you would say, go out and find me three options of black dress shoes and black suede with a low heel, extra cushion, and arch support? And that agent comes back and brings you those three options, and you, great, now I can pick, and I didn't have to do anything.
I can't. I know what you're getting at. I think it's a fair. It's an interesting thought exercise. And here's why I can't. Again, at least not in any reasonable near term future, because you have to accept one key tenant to lean into the argument that you're making, which is people purely buy things based on utilitarian needs. And I think most of human shopping and consumerism is very emotional driven, is very social driven,
Take all that out.
yeah, and in order for what you're describing to work, that all has to go away and it has to be purely utilitarian. I just think we're nowhere near that level of human behavior change.
But then why do you think Harvard Business Review just wrote a story? That's what's happening.
Look, in China, they're used to heavy censorship. They're used to being told what they do. They're used to limited options in certain things. I'm making a lot of big assumptions. And so there's a certain element that fits better in some ways for that. And again, I don't think the article saying that the shopping behavior has completely shifted in the entire country and has totally changed. I think it's a limited experiment in low things that shows interesting outcomes. But even in that country, I think you're a long ways away from the human just giving up all of their decision and preference and emotional triggers to what they consume and buy and just saying, all right, I am now a surrogate and AI just decides everything that I should own and enjoy in this world.
I bet that, like you said, it's not in the near future, but I bet 20 years from now, that's the future. The other thing the article points out, and we'll jump into attribution, is the reason why China was sort of the feature of this story is because their technological backbone of their entire sort of digital infrastructure in China is so advanced, and it makes all of that very possible. Where maybe in the US, we don't have that sophisticated of an infrastructure yet, where an AI agent can actually go buy lunch for me and prescribe when DoorDash is going to deliver it and do all that transaction. This article talked about all the different big digital companies in China that already make that possible. And that's why it's possible for that to happen there. It's not likely all that possible in the US market. But anyway, let's talk about attribution. So hypothetically, if an AI agent goes out and makes those kinds of decisions, again, this is assuming that I didn't tell it exactly what brand to shop for, so on and so forth. Maybe I asked it to go do research on what brand would suit a certain need that I have or believe that I have. In that scenario, advertising is completely irrelevant because, again, an AI agent's not going to scroll a feed and look at ads and decide what's best. It's a total black box. Conversion and all those traditional sort of media metrics, analytics metrics that we look at today for attribution are dust. Like those no longer exist. There's no pixel that's doing anything. There's no cross-channel attribution. There's no funnel-based attribution or optimization. It's all within the black box algorithm of the AI agent deciding what to do. So what do we do there?
So I like this part of the conversation because I think it's a chance to highlight what I think it's an extreme version of a problem that I think we already face, that our industry tends to face. And it's one of the things that I criticize a lot about why I think certain marketing or advertising entities don't do as good of a job as I think they could have. And I'll unpack that a little bit. What I think happens now, and I think it'll only get worse in the description, and I'll go into that, is a lot of times we get stuck in this momentum of motion and consistency of what we do without taking a step back and thinking about it and analyzing it properly. And by that, I mean, I think a lot of entities will simply be charged with a marketing task of you have a budget, you have an outcome, and muscle memory almost kicks in. And you're like, okay, great. I'm going to run search ads, I'm going to run meta ads, and I'm going to do this targeting. And it's just this rinse and repeat cycle of task outcomes for the objective without a very important layer, or at least nearly as much as it should be, which is really considering what you're trying to accomplish, which I take back to influencing human behaviors and outcomes that would not have otherwise happened. And taking the time to think through what that means, which is what message am I delivering? What's the emotional response that I'm eliciting? What's the mechanism of delivery? Is it video? Is it content? When a human sees this, what do I think they're going to do? Do I think they're going to click on it? Do I think they're going to remember it? Do I think they're going to walk into a store? Really mapping out what you're trying to accomplish when you spend money and all of the individual components and variables that are built in what play a role in whether or not that outcome happens. And I say that because this extreme version takes into a whole new layer of consideration if you go through that step, which is I'm not now just thinking about I serve an ad on Meta, a human sees that ad as they're scrolling through on their phone. What do I expect them to do about it? Now I have to think about, am I speaking to an AI agent first? Am I ever going to get to the human? Am I feeding an algorithm? Am I feeding a human response? Am I feeding some combo of the two? Am I adding in an extra step here and I'm going to have to pick up the baton after the fact for the next action? It just adds more variability and more consideration of what you're trying to accomplish when you deploy that money on behalf of whoever's hired you to do that. And I already think in what should be considered, so much of it is not considered enough that it's going to break that cycle even more. And I don't think that you're going to break the need for spending dollars for a client in that intelligent, thoughtful way. But I think you're going to have to start to factor multiple executions, the human versus machine aspect, who you're tailoring to, what you're breaking through. And I think that becomes even worse because, like I said, without a whole second layer of consideration that we don't have yet right now, really, I think people fail to do that nearly as much as they need to before they just jump right into, great, I have $1 million. I want to get some ads out there. I'm going to buy some CTV ads or I'm going to buy some meta ads and I'm just going to take one singular KPI metric. I'm going to optimize to ROAS and that's what I'm going to report on. And that's the job I was hired to do. And I can bring this around into why that happens. There's the whole concept of task management and fee structures and talent being deployed. And am I just getting paid to do a service like buy meta ads, or am I being paid to be a marketer who puts in that thought and that consideration, that creative problem solving? But all this does is muddy up already unclear waters that I think there's a lot of problems that happen because of competing objectives. People are trying to make their money and be profitable. People are trying to create outcomes. People are trying to break through. Now you add in the machine learning aspect of it, and it's a whole nother element of consideration that will shift the way that things have to be done. And I'll be curious to see if people shift in it appropriately to factor that in and really come up with creative, smart, brilliant, innovative solutions to it. Or if it just becomes, okay, well, now I don't have to optimize to a human. I optimize to a machine. I shift my KPI and I still just keep doing the rinse and repeat process that shows up good on paper and I keep getting paid for it.
So what I sort of am coming to the conclusion at based on what you're saying is, I think if I can summarize this in two areas. One is reminds me of the ZMOT thing that Google published, I don't know, 15 years ago, the zero moment of truth, which was a takeoff on Procter & Gamble's FMOT, first moment of truth, which is how you make decisions in the grocery store aisle when there's multiple products of the same thing or multiple brands of the same product. And in the zero moment of truth model, it suggests that when I walk down the aisle, this is for grocery, obviously, and I look at, I don't know, yogurts, the upstream marketing has already planted the seed in my mind so that I know when I get to the aisle, I want Chobani. And I want Chobani because all the upstream marketing already planted that seed in my mind, right?
It looked tasty on the commercial. It's a flavor that I've been interested in. I buy into its value proposition, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, people on social media love it. It's got the right amount of protein, the least amount of sugar, whatever. So I've already got this mental picture. When I get to the grocery store and I'm going to buy yogurt, I'm going after Chobani. So all of that upstream marketing is what informed the buying decision. So what you're lobbying for is that probably still will be required, where the upstream sort of decisioning and strategic, or the strategic decisioning frameworks that an agency like us, a marketing services provider, would still be highly valuable for a client, because all of that upstream sort of framework still needs to be figured out. Because once, whether an agent goes out to buy because the consumer pre-programmed it with its preferences, and or maybe it's even asking it to do research and it comes back with three choices and Chobani is one of those choices, the upstream marketing has planted the seed to go, yeah, Chobani, that's the brand I want. So I think that's a little bit of what I'm hearing you argue for, at least here in the US. That might be very different in China.
Well, I mean, obviously, I don't know where it's going to go, right? I mean, look, we're not even at self-driving cars yet, right? Like people are pushing back against a lot of things.
That is
Not
true.
completely. Not, I mean, there is not 100% self-driving cars that a consumer can buy. Because trust me, I would buy one if I could have a Waymo car. I would love to have one, but we're not even there. Like, yeah, like there's just not this readiness for humans to totally just give up their involvement in the process, right? AI is still in its infancy of being a support mechanism and an enhancer, let alone just give it all up and I'm no longer in the loop. Like, I think we're so far away from that. Maybe I prove to be wrong, but the fact of the matter is the fact that I cannot go buy a Waymo self-driving car where I am not totally uninvolved in it just tells me that, like, I think this idea of just completely cutting out humans is not as close as, obviously there's an article that has to find a breakthrough, clickable, interesting angle so it gets coverage and eyeballs on it. So it's got to make some bold, extreme claims, and it is an interesting thought experiment. But there's a balance, and I think it indicates something to be aware of and anticipating for. But do I think that 6 months from now we're no longer marketing to humans and we're just getting agents that make all the decisions? Like, I don't think we're anywhere near that.
All right. Well, the backup to the attribution thing is, it remains to be seen how, if an AI agent goes out and conducts commerce, we have no idea what the trackability of that's going to be at this point, because again, it's not going to fire a pixel necessarily that's traceable, unless someday Shopify or Google Analytics or something says that ChatGPT was the buyer. Like, I don't know how that stuff.
But there is some kind of a digital footprint, right? Like even now, like I said, if you go into marketing and you take that second to think about and really plan through, all we're really doing is saying, when I spend dollars, what is the digital trace, the digital footprint that occurs that I can tap into and say, because I spent this dollar, this signal existed, this click-through rate, this traffic, this walking into something that becomes measurable. Then you're able to tie that back, and that's the basis of analytics. And so if you start to do that to algorithms or machine learning or whatever it is you want to call it, there will be some digital trace, some digital signal, something that someone's got to be creative and think about, let me really think about what happens as a result. And let me think about the consistency of that signal, how reliable it is, and if I have to build a model in it. So I don't know what the solution is because I don't know what the real environment is, but you have to believe that even if that happens, that's when you need really smart, thoughtful people to take that step back and say, okay, now I simply need to think of the environment I'm operating in, map out what's possible and what's not possible, and either have a direct line of sight into that or have a modeled or highly well thought out regression model or something that tells me pattern recognition or some outcome. But everything produces some kind of a trace that can inform attribution analytics if you're smart enough to slow down and think about it that way versus, yeah, what I don't think it'll be is I give you money, you pop it into some black box and it just magically runs everything and it just works.
I'm going to do that one of these days and then show you how it works.
I would be thrilled to have anyone prove me differently because I hear everyone tout that it can be done. I've never seen a truly uncherry picked, genuine result that is, you're like, wow, yeah, they did everything without human intervention or without a narrow scope. It's always promises this really big thing. And then when you dig into it, it's like, well, it was one segment in one area that was looked at this way, and it had this, and it was reviewed by these people. And you're like, well, at the end of the day, all it was a variation of what we do anyway.
Well, yeah. And so what you're saying is that, again, if you go upstream to the decision layer, the strategic decision layer of, say, marketing services companies being a support mechanism for a brand, or agencies being a support mechanism for a brand, if I were a CMO, I'd be hiring an agency that has really critical intelligence and critical senior level thinking around these kinds of things if I don't have it in house, because I would want teams of people who think about this all day long and think about, in an agentic world, what are we going to optimize to? How is it going to be influenced? Do we still need to focus on brand, because that still is going to matter long before the agent is activated, right? And that still matters. That's the zero moment of truth model that still probably holds a lot of weight today. So
yeah, the way that I would summarize it is, I wouldn't want to hire an agency that just acts like an assembly line of outcomes, that's just taking me in, saying, okay, here's your creative, putting it into Google or Meta and popping it out, and not really putting thought into it. I wouldn't want that assembly line of efficiency, if you will, right? I would want someone who is absorbing and learning the business and thinking about it and being creative and saying, well, why am we putting it here? What is the opportunity cost? What's the next best dollar? And thinking about, okay, well, what exposure are we creating? And that is very different than just, we buy search ads, you give me money and I do that, and it either works or it doesn't.
all right, well, enough about that topic. We'll see what happens. So final word here is, contrary to your opinion, I was having a conversation with my neighbor the other day who was moving and works for Qualcomm, drives a Tesla, and we were talking about his Tesla, and he said he has not driven his Tesla to work himself in the last year. He gets in the car in his driveway, presses the button to go to Qualcomm. He doesn't do anything. It drives him to work, drives him to home, parks itself. All he does is get in and get out. So tell me how that's not a driverless car?
Sure. Tell him to get in the back seat and take a nap while it takes him to work.
Okay, you mean that level of driverless. You mean that level where it's basically a taxi. Okay, I wasn't taking your statement in that level.
Tell him to do work on his laptop while he's driving and see how quickly his autonomous driving gets taken away from him.
No, yeah, he said it has some sort of facial retinal recognition. And so if he takes his eyes off the road for too long, it'll chirp at him.
100%. That's all I'm talking about. There is no, like, literally,
he's not driving it.
It's not a driverless carriage that just takes you where you want to go. And
no,
like if you could buy a Waymo car, it could work like that.
Yeah, well, someday. Probably by the time your daughter starts driving, she won't need a driver's license, because that won't be a thing.
I mean, it depends on the I don't know if the lobbyists will ever allow, how long it's going to take for them to really fight back and let anything like that through.
Okay, so final wrap. I think you and I agree, and maybe some people don't agree, that decision logic, decision strategy, decision ownership, commercial strategy, even this sort of what do I want to call it? AI agentic commerce sort of readiness, like all that stuff is still very much needed. And there's marketing companies out there that are going to get hired to do that and be experts in it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, the recap for me is, it's not an interesting article to take light steps. You got to be extreme on it. I think the takeaway for me is, it is very interesting. It's very interesting to project in and think about and prepare and hypothesize about what the future is and start to adapt and be creative so that you can think that through when it comes. But the extreme version of, we literally don't market to humans anymore, it's agents that just buy on people's behalf, I don't see that anytime real soon.
We shall see. All right. Happy Monday. I will talk to you on this podcast again in another 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Contrary to Popular Opinion, where we challenge you to think independently, push the limits, and take uncommon action so you can achieve game-changing results in your business and your life. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.